The morning sun burned through the clouds above the Navy SEAL training base. The ground was wet from last night's storm, and the air smelled like salt and metal. Rows of strong men in uniform stood tall, boots shining, arms crossed. Eyes fixed on the new recruits arriving at the gate. Among them walked a woman. She was small, quiet, and moved with a calm rhythm. Not the usual nervous shuffle of a new recruit. Her steps were firm, her eyes steady, and her expression unreadable. Someone at the back whispered, "Is that a joke? They sent a woman this time?" Laughter rippled through the group. Even the older officers exchanged smirks. Female trainees were rare here. This was one of the hardest SEAL training camps in the country. Most men didn't even make it past the first week. Commander Ryan, the toughest and most feared officer in the camp, stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried the kind of presence that made others stand straighter when he passed. He glanced at the clipboard in his hand, then at the woman. "Name?" he asked sharply. "Lena, sir?" "Lena Hart," she said calmly. Her voice was soft but clear, no shake, no fear. Ryan looked her up and down. She wore the standard training gear, plain, simple, but there was something about her stance that didn't fit. She didn't look like someone who had just arrived. Her shoulders were relaxed, her eyes focused on the horizon, not on him. Ryan smirked. "You sure you're in the right place, miss? The cooking school is across the base." The men around him laughed loudly. A few clapped their hands, enjoying the scene. Lena didn't react. She simply saluted. "Permission to prove you wrong, sir," she said. Ryan raised an eyebrow. He wasn't used to confidence like that, especially from someone so quiet, so still. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This isn't a joke, trainee. You'll be running 10 miles a day, swimming in freezing water, carrying more weight than your own body. Most men here cry before breakfast." "I'll try not to cry, sir," Lena replied simply. The laughter behind him grew louder. Ryan sighed and walked away, shaking his head. That morning, the recruits were thrown into their first challenge, the Hell Welcome. It was a brutal mix of push-ups, mud crawls, water dips, and log carries. The instructors shouted until their voices cracked. The sound of boots slamming, metal clanging, and men gasping filled the air. Lena was right in the middle of it. The men beside her ran fast, shouting to motivate each other. She said nothing. Her face stayed calm, her breathing steady. Every move she made was clean and focused, like she'd done this before, 100 times before. But no one noticed. All they saw was a woman struggling to keep up. "Come on, sweetheart. Don't break a nail," someone shouted. The others laughed again. Ryan watched from a distance, arms folded. He had seen hundreds of trainees over the years, strong, smart, confident, but few made it to the end. And this one? She didn't look like she'd last an hour. After 2 hours, most recruits were covered in mud, panting hard. Lena's clothes were soaked, her hair sticking to her face. But she didn't stop. Not once. When the instructor yelled, "Push-ups 50," she dropped instantly, completing them in perfect form. When he said, "Crawl through the wire," she slid under, smooth and silent. Ignoring the stones cutting her arms, the other recruits started to notice, by the end of the drill. Several men had collapsed, gasping for air. Lena stood, wiped mud from her face, and saluted the instructor. "Completed, sir." Ryan's smirk faded just a little. Later, during the lunch break, the jokes started again. A group of trainees sat around, laughing and eating fast. Lena sat alone, quietly eating from her tray, not reacting to the whispers. "Bet she's an officer's daughter," one said. "Yeah, someone pulled strings for her to get in here," another added. "She quit by tomorrow," the first one said confidently. But none of them noticed the faint scar on her right hand. A thin, white line, the kind that came from years of handling weapons. By evening, the recruits were ordered to the obstacle course. It was long, rough, and dangerous, the real test of stamina and fear. Climbing walls, barbed wires, rope swings over water, crawling through narrow tunnels. Ryan gave the order. "Move!" The men charged forward, shouting. Mud splashed. Ropes swung. Shouts filled the air. Lena started last, not rushing, not panicking. One by one, she moved through the course. She didn't jump wildly or swing with power. Instead, she calculated each move like a puzzle. By the halfway mark, she had passed most of the others. Ryan noticed it from the watchtower. How the hell? He muttered under his breath at the final wall she climbed with quiet strength. When she reached the top, she paused for a second, looking out at the sea. Then she jumped down, landing smoothly on her feet. The stopwatch clicked. She was the second to finish. Silence spread among the men. Ryan blew the whistle. Everyone gather up. He looked at the scoreboard, then at her. You've been trained before, he said slowly. No, sir, she replied. He narrowed his eyes. You sure? Lena simply nodded. He didn't believe her. That night, while the others rested, Ryan sat in his office. Looking through the new recruit files, he found her record Lena Hart, 28, transfer from Intelligence Division, but most of the file was blacked out, classified. His brow furrowed. Classified files were never given to basic trainees. He leaned back in his chair, tapping the pen on the desk. Who are you, Lena Hart? The next morning, the sky was still dark when the siren screamed. Up. Everyone out. Full gear in 2 minutes. The recruits ran out, half awake, struggling with boots and vests. Lena was already outside, standing straight, eyes on the flagpole. Ryan watched her quietly. There was something unsettling about how calm she always looked. No fear, no confusion, no weakness. It wasn't arrogance. It was something deeper. Experience. During swimming drills, Ryan pushed her limits. Stay under till I say surface, he shouted. Lena nodded and dove into the icy water. Seconds turned to minutes. Ryan checked his watch. 1 minute, 2, 3. The men standing by started whispering. She's gonna pass out. Sir, should we, before anyone could finish? Lena surfaced calm, breathing evenly, no panic in her eyes. Ryan froze. No trainee had ever stayed under that long on day 2. When the drill ended, he approached her directly. You're not telling me something, Hart? With respect, sir, I'm just following orders, she said. He stared at her for a long moment. There was something familiar in her tone, that calm, almost military precision that only veterans had. He leaned closer. You've done this before? I can see it in your eyes. Her expression didn't change. Sir, permission to continue training. Ryan exhaled slowly. Granted. Later that day, a storm rolled in. Winds howled. Waves crashed against the nearby shore. The recruits were ordered to practice navigation drills, one of the toughest exercises in the program, as rain poured. The men struggled to find their way through the fog and mud. Lena stayed quiet, moving ahead, compass in hand. Every turn she made was correct, every move precise. One of the trainees whispered to another, She's not normal, man. No one moves like that unless they've done real missions. Ryan heard it too. He watched her through the storm, the rain hitting his face. Something in his gut told him this woman wasn't here to learn. She was here to test them. That night, while everyone slept, Ryan stayed in his office again. He opened her file once more, flipping through pages. There was a hidden note at the back. Restricted record. Field name V1, clearance level 6? Ryan frowned. V, he whispered. He typed the code into the secure system. A single result appeared on the screen. It said, Viper 1, classified operative. Last mission, Desert Storm Rescue. He froze. The name Viper 1 was legendary in the Navy, a call sign spoken in whispers. A soldier who completed missions alone. A ghost who vanished after saving an entire team trapped behind enemy lines. No one had ever seen Viper 1's face. Ryan looked up slowly, the sound of the rain pounding outside. He finally understood why her eyes looked that way. Calm, cold, focused. He whispered to himself, Viper 1, you've got to be kidding me. The next morning, when Lena stood in line for roll call, Ryan didn't smirk anymore. He just watched her quietly. The other men still laughed, still doubted. But Ryan didn't. He knew exactly who she was now and why she had come back. She wasn't there to train. She was there to watch, to see who was strong enough to follow her, and from that day on, no one at that camp would ever forget the name Viper. 1. The sun was still hidden behind the clouds when the next training day began. The recruits lined up, mud on their boots, exhaustion in their eyes. Most of them were barely standing after yesterday's drills. But Lena. She stood still, quiet, alert. Commander Ryan walked down the line, inspecting each trainee. His sharp eyes moved across the men, but when he reached Lena, he paused. Yesterday he had mocked her. Today something about her silence made him uneasy. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. It was as if she was reading him instead. Ryan stepped closer. "Sleep well, Hart." "Yes, sir. Ready to fail again today?" "If failure teaches, sir, then yes," she replied calmly. The other trainees laughed. Ryan almost smiled, but something in her voice reminded him of someone he couldn't name. Someone from the field, long ago. The whistle blew. 10-mile run? Full gear? An instructor shouted. The group groaned. The ground was muddy, the air thick with humidity. They strapped on their heavy packs and started running. Within minutes, several trainees began to slow down. Ryan followed behind in a jeep, watching. He saw Lena, small, quiet Lena, running in perfect rhythm. Not too fast, not too slow. Every breath measured, every step precise. Like a soldier who had done this for years, by mile 6, 2 men had dropped out. By mile 8, another stumbled and fell. Lena didn't stop. She even helped one man back to his feet without breaking stride. Ryan watched silently, his hand tightening on the jeep door. "Who are you, Hart?" he whispered again, when they finally reached the finish line. Lena's uniform was drenched, her hands trembling, but she still saluted. "Run complete, sir." Ryan didn't reply. He just nodded once and turned away. Later that afternoon, the recruits gathered for weapon drills. A long table of rifles lay in front of them. Each trainee was to assemble and disassemble their weapon under pressure. 3 minutes, the instructor barked. Go. The air filled with the clinking of metal and the muttering of frustrated voices. Some struggled with the bolts, others dropped screws into the sand. But Lena's movements were different. She didn't rush. She didn't even look flustered. Her fingers moved smoothly, each piece fitting perfectly in place. When the whistle blew, she was already done. 2 minutes and 12 seconds. Ryan's eyes widened slightly. That was faster than half his senior officers. That night, when the recruits were dismissed, Lena stayed behind in the training yard. The moon was high, the wind cold. She ran the course again, alone, silent footsteps echoing between the walls. From his office window, Ryan saw her. He didn't move, didn't interrupt. He just watched. She was fast. Too fast. In her body language, it wasn't that of a beginner. She moved with discipline, like she'd lived through something far worse than any of his drills. Ryan opened his drawer and pulled out her classified file again. Half the lines were blacked out. But there was one name at the bottom, a name he couldn't stop thinking about. VIPERONE. He whispered the call sign again, like a secret too dangerous to say aloud. Viper 1. I thought you were gone. The next morning, Ryan arrived early at the base. He found 2 senior officers already there, whispering near the gate. When they noticed him, they went silent. Ryan frowned. Something I should know, gentlemen? The older officer hesitated. Sir, about that new trainee. Lena Hart. What about her? The man exchanged glances with his partner. We're not supposed to talk about it, sir? Her file's restricted above our clearance. Ryan's eyes narrowed. Who cleared her? Top command, sir. Directly from D.C. Ryan froze. That almost never happened. He turned his gaze toward the parade ground where Lena was warming up quietly. So that was it. She wasn't here because she wanted to learn. She was here because someone wanted her to be seen. During the next drill, Ryan decided to test her for real. Underwater endurance. Let's see how long you can survive under pressure, he ordered. The recruits lined up by the cold training pool. The water looked black under the cloudy sky. 2 minutes underwater, Ryan shouted. Anyone who surfaces early does 50 push-ups in the mud.
Ow.
One by one, they dove in. Bubbles rose quickly. Most of them couldn't last even a minute. Lena was the last to go under. Ryan kept his eyes on his stopwatch. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 3. Still nothing. The men began to murmur nervously. Sir, she's been under too long. Ryan didn't move. Wait. At 3 minutes 30, a small ripple broke the surface. Lena rose slowly, water dripping down her face. Her eyes were calm. Not a single gasp for air. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He'd seen that kind of control only once before in the field, under real fire. He remembered a woman's voice on the radio years ago. Target down. Extraction complete. Viper 1 out. His hand shook for a second. That evening, while the recruits cleaned their gear, Ryan called her into his office. She entered silently, standing tall, her uniform spotless. Sit, he said. She didn't move. I prefer to stand, sir. Ryan leaned forward. Where did you learn to hold your breath that long? In training, sir. What kind of training? The kind that teaches you to survive. He smiled faintly. You're good at avoiding questions. She answered simply, I'm better at following orders. For a moment, silence filled the room. Only the ticking of the wall clock could be heard. Then Ryan spoke softly. Viper 1. Lena's eyes flickered just once. Then they went still again. I don't know what you mean, sir, she said. Ryan stared at her. You know exactly what I mean. You're not here to learn. You're here to watch. Why? But she said nothing. Just a small, unreadable smile. Permission to return to training, sir? Ryan nodded slowly. Dismissed. As she left the office, Ryan sat back and sighed deeply. He had spent years commanding brave soldiers, but this one, this quiet woman, was different. She carried something heavy behind her calm eyes. Something darker than any war he'd seen later that night. While everyone slept, Ryan received a secure call from the Central Command. A robotic voice came through the static. Commander Ryan, do not interfere with Trainee Hart's process. Observe only. She is under special orders. He tried to speak. What kind of orders? Classified. Click. The line went dead. Ryan stared at the phone. Then out at the dark sea beyond the window. Wind howled through the camp. She's not just a soldier, he whispered. She's something else. The next day began with chaos. A training explosion, part of a simulation, went wrong. Smoke filled the air. Alarms blared. Men panicked. Ryan rushed to the scene. Before he could shout a single command, Lena was already there, calm, precise. Giving orders, you two get the wounded out. You seal that valve before it blows again? Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. The men obeyed instinctively. Within minutes, the fire was under control. The injured were safe. Ryan stood frozen, watching her. She had taken control of his entire unit perfectly, confidently, as if she'd been leading them all her life. When it was over, he stepped toward her. You took command without permission. She looked him straight in the eye. You were 30 seconds late, sir. For a moment, he didn't know whether to be angry or impressed. That night, Ryan sat alone at the training dock. The sea was calm now, reflecting the moon. He replayed everything in his head, her strength, her calm, her silence. She reminded him of someone who'd once saved his life overseas, a voice over the radio, guiding his team through a deadly ambush. That same voice had whispered at the end. Viper 1 signing off. He had never met her. Never knew her face. Until now, maybe. He closed his eyes, whispering, It's you, isn't it? Far across the camp, Lena stood alone in her bunk room, holding a small, worn-out patch in her hands, a snake coiled around a number 1. The symbol of Viper 1. She traced the edges gently, her eyes dark with memories. Flashbacks flickered, gunfire, smoke, a helicopter crash, screams over the radio. She could still hear her partner's last words before the explosion. "Get out, Viper." That's an order. She had never gotten out. Now, standing under the flickering light, she whispered to herself, "This isn't training. It's a test." Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. The storm was coming, not just in the sky, but inside the camp, and soon. Everyone would find out who Viper One really was. Morning came with a sharp wind cutting through the camp. The sky was gray, heavy with the promise of rain. The recruits stood in perfect formation, boots sinking into the damp dirt. Commander Ryan walked across the line slowly, his boots crunching over gravel. Everyone stood straight except for one, Lena Hart. She didn't look nervous or tired. Her uniform was clean, her eyes alert. It was as if the long nights, cold drills, and endless shouting had never touched her. She stood with quiet confidence, watching the flag rise as the trumpet played. Ryan's eyes lingered on her longer than usual. He was done underestimating her. He knew who she was, or at least who she used to be. But no one else did. To everyone else, she was still just the new girl, the one who somehow hadn't quit yet. Ryan folded his arms. "Today's the real test," he said loudly. "Half of you won't make it. The rest will wish you hadn't." A nervous laugh went through the group. Lena didn't smile. She just stared straight ahead. The recruits were marched to the training ground, where a huge obstacle stood, the Endurance Gauntlet. It was the hardest course in the entire program. Miles of crawling, climbing, swimming, and tactical shooting, all under time pressure. Ryan stood at the front. "You think yesterday was hard?" said. "Today, you'll beg to go back to it." He looked at Lena. "Especially you, Hart. Let's see how long you last when the mud gets real." The men around her chuckled. One whispered hope she packed her makeup. Lena said nothing. She simply adjusted her gloves and nodded once. Ryan blew the whistle. "Go." The recruits ran. Mud splashed, shouts echoed, and metal rattled. The first task was a 200-yard crawl under barbed wire. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, turning the dirt into thick, sticky sludge. Men struggled to move forward, the wire scraping their backs, their arms burning. Ryan watched with a stern face, shouting every few seconds, "Move! Move! Don't stop!" Lena dropped to the ground and began crawling, slow at first, then faster. Her movements were efficient, almost robotic. She didn't waste energy, didn't panic when the wire snagged her sleeve. She just kept moving. By the time the others reached halfway, she was already out, standing, waiting for the next task. Ryan's jaw tightened. "Keep going, Hart. Don't wait for applause." She nodded and moved to the next station, a tall wooden wall soaked in rain. The wall was 12 feet high. Even the strongest recruits struggled to climb it in the mud. Ryan expected her to hesitate, maybe ask for help. But she didn't. She ran straight at it, jumped, caught the top edge with both hands, and pulled herself over in one clean motion. The men watching stopped mid-dash climb. One muttered, "What the hell?" Ryan's eyes followed her silently. She didn't look back. By the time she reached the third obstacle, rope swaying over cold water, the others were still trying to conquer the wall. She grabbed the rope, swung across, and landed smoothly. Mud splashed around her boots. She didn't even flinch. Ryan lowered his stopwatch slowly. She was faster than his best times, even for trained SEALs. The fourth task, tactical shooting. Targets popped up one by one in the rain. The recruits fumbled, aiming with shaking hands. Lena picked up her rifle, checked it once, and fired. Each shot was clean. Every bullet hit the center. Ryan's throat went dry. Only someone with field experience could shoot that calm, that precise, especially under pressure. He didn't speak. He didn't even write down her score. He just stared, realizing more with each passing second that this woman was no ordinary recruit. As the test ended, most men collapsed in the mud, gasping for breath. Lena stood straight, chest rising and falling slowly. Her clothes were soaked, her hands dirty, but her face calm as always. Ryan walked over. "Not bad for a rookie," he said, trying to sound casual. "Thank you, sir," she replied. "You've done this before," he said quietly. She met his eyes. "I've done harder, sir." For a second, Ryan saw something flash in her expression. Pain, maybe memory. Then it was gone. That night, the camp was silent, except for the rain tapping against the metal roofs. Lena sat alone in the cafeteria, eating quietly. Her body ached, but her mind was sharp, always alert. Always listening, two trainees sat behind her, whispering, "Did you see her today? She's like a machine." Yeah. Or a spy. "Maybe she's here to test us. Or maybe she's just lucky." Lena didn't turn around. But the faintest hint of a smile crossed her lips. Lucky wasn't the word. She had survived ambushes, explosions, and betrayals. Luck had nothing to do with it. Later that night, Ryan was in his office again. He couldn't sleep. Lena's performance replayed in his mind like a loop he couldn't escape. He opened her file for the 10th time. Every classified page stared back at him, black bars and sealed text. Only one phrase stood out, reinstated under silent orders. Observation period. 14 days. He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. Observation period. He muttered. Observation for what? Suddenly, the phone on his desk buzzed. A message flashed on the screen. Do not interfere with subject V1. Report progress only. His heart skipped. So it was true. She was Viper 1. He exhaled deeply and looked out the window, watching lightning strike over the ocean. What are you doing here, Viper? He whispered. What are you looking for? The next morning, the air smelled like gunpowder. A live fire simulation had been scheduled, the final challenge of the week. Ryan briefed the team. This is a real-time scenario. You move through the forest, locate the dummy hostage, and bring them back alive. Fail, and you restart. Safety off. Keep your head down. Lena listened silently, helmet on, rifle strapped. Her eyes scanned the map once, only once, then she memorized it. When the siren blared, the team sprinted into the forest. Rain still fell, turning the leaves slick. Mud splashed under every boot, shots fired blanks, but loud and chaotic. Trainees yelled, some ducked, others panicked. Lena moved differently, quiet, focused. Her boots barely made a sound. She signaled to two men nearby, guiding them through hand gestures. They followed instinctively, as if she had trained them for years. Within minutes, her small team located the dummy hostage and secured the perimeter. When enemy fire simulated blanks came from the left, she didn't panic. She aimed once, fired. Perfect hit at the command tent. Ryan watched everything on the live feed. His officers were whispering behind him. Sir, who trained her? Ryan didn't answer. He couldn't. He just watched her move through the forest like a ghost. Every step precise. Every decision right. Then something happened. A loud explosion echoed from the far side of the forest. One of the faulty grenades from the simulation had gone off for real. Smoke rose. Chaos erupted. Shut it down. Ryan barked. Everyone out now. But Lena's voice came over the radio, calm, steady. Negative, sir. 2 men down near checkpoint 7. I'm getting them out. Let's stand down hard. That's an order. Ryan shouted silence then, her voice again. Orders don't matter when lives are at risk. Static followed. Ryan clenched his jaw. God damn it. Minutes later, she emerged from the forest, dragging 2 wounded trainees by their vests. Her uniform was torn, her arm bleeding slightly, but her face was calm as ever. The medics rushed in, taking the injured men. Ryan ran toward her. What part of stand down didn't you understand? He snapped. She met his eyes, unflinching. The part where people die if I wait, sir? For a moment, no one spoke. Even the officers nearby froze, watching the tension between them. Ryan finally exhaled. Who are you, Hart? She looked past him, toward the horizon. Just a soldier who still remembers what matters, sir. That night, Ryan sat alone again, replaying the footage of the explosion on his screen. He watched her dive into the smoke, dragging the men out without hesitation. Not fear instinct. He knew now. She wasn't here to train. She was here because command was watching him. Maybe to test his leadership. Maybe to test the next generation of SEALs. Or maybe she was here to find something that had been lost years ago. Outside, in the dark barracks, Lena stood by the window, the rain running down the glass. She held a small dog tag in her hand, faded and scratched. 2 names engraved side by side. Viper 1, Ghost 6. Her voice broke in a whisper. I'm not done yet. I'll find out what really happened. She slipped the tag back under her shirt, straightened her posture, and looked out into the storm. The wind howled through the base. Lightning flashed, and somewhere deep inside the camp, a new order was being prepared, one that would change everything for both of them. Night settled over the SEAL camp like a heavy blanket. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the air thick and silent. Most of the recruits were asleep, too exhausted to move after the day's brutal training, but Commander Ryan couldn't sleep. Something about Lena Hart, or Viper 1, as he now knew, wouldn't let his mind rest. He sat in his dimly lit office, staring at the screen showing the day's surveillance footage. Every frame showed her moving with purpose, calm, calculated, precise. Not a single mistake. No hesitation. Who sent you here? He muttered to himself. On his desk, her classified file sat open. Same blacked out lines, same sealed orders. And at the bottom, one chilling note, mission embedded. Unauthorized interference prohibited.
I frowned.
If she was here under a secret mission, then what was she doing during the nights when everyone else slept? He decided to find out at exactly 2:47 a.m. Ryan left his office quietly, moving through the silent barracks like a shadow. The moonlight slipped through the fog, casting faint silver lines across the ground. He knew the cameras wouldn't show her. Someone had disabled them between midnight and 3 a.m. every night. That was his first clue. As he turned the corner behind the mess hall, he saw her. Lena stood near the back fence alone, her face dimly lit by the soft green glow of a small handheld radio. She was speaking in a whisper. Her tone was firm, calm, but emotional, like she was talking to someone she trusted deeply. Ryan crouched behind a jeep. Listening, her words came through the faint static. This place isn't what it seems. They're still covering it up. The files are gone. I need confirmation before I move forward. Pause. Then a voice replied deep, distorted through the static. Copy that, Viper 1. Stay quiet. You're not alone this time. Her hand tightened on the radio. They think I don't remember, but I do. I saw the explosion. I saw Ghost 6 go down. Ryan froze. Ghost 6. He remembered that name, the code name of a SEAL who had gone missing years ago in a failed mission overseas. The case had been buried, classified, and now this woman was talking. About it like she'd been there. Lena switched off the radio, tucked it back into her sleeve, and turned toward the barracks. Ryan stayed hidden until she disappeared inside. His heart pounded. He wanted to confront her, demand answers, but something told him to wait. If she really was connected to Ghost 6, then this wasn't just about training. It was about revenge, or truth. Maybe both. The next morning, the recruits gathered again for drills. The sun was hot, burning through the mist. Everyone looked half dead from exhaustion except Lena. Ryan stood at the front, arms crossed. He kept his expression cold, but his mind was spinning. Today, he said, we're testing endurance and teamwork. You'll move as one unit. No heroes. No solos. His eyes locked on Lena when he said the last part. She met his gaze without blinking. The training began. The recruits ran through the forest trail in full gear. Mud splattered, leaves crunched, and orders shouted through the air. Lena moved smoothly, leading without trying to lead. When one man stumbled, she pulled him up. When another lost his weapon, she tossed it back. Her instincts were sharp, like she'd done this 1,000 times. Ryan followed at a distance, pretending to observe, but really watching her. At one point, the group reached a shallow river. The current was strong. One recruit panicked halfway through, shouting for help. Before anyone else reacted, Lena dove into the water. She swam against the current, grabbed the man, and pushed him to safety. Then she climbed out, coughing, drenched but calm. Ryan shouted, "Hart, you could have waited for backup." She replied, breathless but steady, "And if I waited, he'd be dead, sir." The team fell silent. Ryan's jaw tightened. She reminded him of someone from years ago who had said almost the same thing. Ghost 6. Later in the locker room, the other recruits were whispering again. "Did you see her? She's faster than anyone here. Maybe she's special forces. Or maybe she's not even supposed to be here." Lena ignored them, sitting quietly on a bench, untying her boots. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from memory. She could still hear the sound of that explosion years ago, the one that took Ghost 6. She had been there, part of the same mission. But command told her to forget, to bury it, to disappear. Now, she was back, under a new name, trying to uncover the truth, and someone in this camp, maybe even Ryan, knew what really happened that night. That evening, Ryan called her to his office. "Sit," he said, voice cold. She obeyed, silent as always. He tossed a file on the desk. "You've been performing too perfectly, Hart, almost like you've done this before." She looked at the file calmly. "Is that a problem, sir?" "Depends," he said. "Tell me something. Why are you really here?" Her expression didn't change. "To serve, sir." He leaned closer. "Don't play games with me. I know who you are." Her eyes flickered for a second, then she whispered, "Do you?" Ryan's pulse quickened. She stood up, saluted sharply, and walked out without another word, leaving him staring after her, both angry and curious. That night, the camp lights went out at exactly midnight. All of them. At once, Ryan was instantly alert. He grabbed his flashlight and gun and stepped outside. The base was pitch dark. No sound, no movement, then faint footsteps. He followed them quietly toward the training field. And there she was again, Lena, standing in the middle of the darkness, facing a small steel box half buried in the ground. She was digging. Something metallic glimmered as she pulled it out, a rusted storage. Canister sealed with military markings. Ryan's flashlight clicked on. "Stop right there." Lena froze. He approached slowly, gun lowered, but ready. "What are you doing, Hart?" She turned around slowly, the canister in her hands. Her eyes were calm, almost sad. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me," Ryan said. She took a deep breath. "This belongs to Ghost 6. Ryan's grip on the gun tightened. "That's impossible. Ghost 6 died in an explosion. We never recovered him," she cut in, "because someone didn't want him found." She opened the canister carefully. Inside was a small metal tag, old, burned, but readable. The letters G6. Operation Black Tide. Ryan's face went pale. That operation was erased from records. "I know," Lena said softly, "because I was there. And so were you." The silence hit like thunder. Ryan's heart stopped. He stared at her in disbelief. "You were." "Alpha Team S2nd." She nodded. "Codename Viper 1. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind blew softly through the trees. Ryan lowered his weapon slowly. "If that's true, then why come back?" Her voice broke slightly. "Because someone lied, Ryan. That mission didn't fail because of enemy fire. It failed because someone gave us away." Right. Ryan's throat tightened. He remembered it, the ambush, the chaos, the explosion. He had always believed it was bad luck. "But now," Lena continued, her eyes fierce, "I lost everything that night. My team, my partner, Ghost 6, and I'm going to find out who made it happen." Ryan swallowed hard. "You think it was command?" She looked at him with a cold, tired stare. "No, Commander. I think it was someone here." Lightning flashed behind her, painting her face in pale white light. For the first time, Ryan saw the truth in her eyes, the pain, the anger, and the unshakable resolve. He stepped back, his voice low. "If what you're saying is true, then you've just made yourself a target." She smirked faintly. Wouldn't be the first time, sir. And with that, she walked away, leaving him standing in the rain, staring at the name Viper One engraved on the canister. That night, long after she had gone, Ryan opened a hidden drawer in his desk. Inside was an old photograph, a group of soldiers smiling in the desert sun. Lena was there. So was Ghost 6 and him. His voice trembled as he whispered, "God help us. She's telling the truth." He looked toward the dark training field where she had stood just hours ago. The mystery of Viper One had just begun, and Ryan knew that whatever was coming next would change everything. The storm had returned. Thunder rolled across the sea, shaking the windows of the Navy camp. It was close to midnight, and everyone was asleep. Everyone except Lena Hart. She sat on the edge of her bunk, boots laced tight, eyes fixed on the small digital watch on her wrist. The second hand ticked softly, counting down to something only she knew about. Outside, rain hit the metal roofs in steady rhythm. Each drop seemed to whisper one word in her mind: truth, truth, truth. When the clock hit 0:30, Lena stood up. She moved silently, slipping out of the barracks with the precision of a shadow. The night swallowed her whole. She walked through the back trail that led to the edge of the forest, the restricted zone. No guards were posted there. No cameras. It was the perfect place for secrets. Her gloved hand reached inside her jacket, pulling out a small encrypted radio. She pressed a single button and whispered, "Viper One to command." "I'm in position," a voice answered through static, low, cautious, distorted. "Proceed to coordinate Alpha 7. You'll meet the contact there. He has what you're looking for." Her heartbeat slowed. Finally, after years of searching, someone had come forward. She took a deep breath and stepped into the darkness. But she wasn't alone. From the shadows behind her, Commander Ryan watched every move. He had seen her leave the barracks and followed silently. No flashlight, no radio chatter. He wanted answers. But more than that, he wanted to know who she was meeting. Every instinct screamed, this was dangerous. But Ryan had been through war. He didn't scare easily. The deeper Lena went into the woods, the louder the rain grew. Her boots sank into the wet ground, leaves crunching softly. Finally, she reached a small clearing, a broken shed half covered by vines and rust. A faint light glowed from inside. She stopped, scanning the area. Her instincts were sharp. She could feel she was being watched. But she entered anyway. Inside, the air smelled of oil and damp wood. A single lantern flickered on a wooden crate. And standing beside it, a tall man in a black coat, face hidden under a cap. Lena's hand went to her sidearm. "Identify yourself." The man lifted his head slowly. "I was told Viper One never needed introductions," he said. Her breath caught. That voice, she knew it. Raspy, calm, too familiar. She took a step forward. "Admiral Torres." The man nodded once. The very same admiral who had commanded Operation Black Tide, the mission that destroyed her team. Her hands trembled. She wanted to scream, to ask him why he had vanished, why he let everyone believe they were dead. But she forced her tone to stay calm. "You were supposed to be court-martialed," she said. "They said you died in the crash." The admiral smiled faintly. "That's what they wanted everyone to believe, including you." She frowned. "Who's they?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The people running this camp now. The new command isn't what it looks like. They're hiding Black Tide's truth. They buried the reports, the casualties, even the name of Ghost 6.
Oh.
Her eyes widened. "You knew about him?" Torres nodded. "I knew him very well, and I know what really happened that night." Lena's pulse raced. "Tell me." But before he could answer, a branch snapped outside. Lena froze. Her gun was out in seconds. Torres raised his hand. "Easy. We're not alone." The door burst open. Ryan stepped in, gun drawn, flashlight blazing. "Drop it, both of you," he shouted. Lena turned, shocked. "Commander?" Ryan's eyes darted between them. "What the hell is going on here, Hart?" Torres smirked. Still the same hot-headed soldier. Ryan's flashlight hit his face and recognition struck. Torres, you're supposed to be dead. The Admiral sighed. Seems death is the only way to survive in this world. Lena lowered her gun slightly. He's not the enemy, sir. Ryan snapped. Then who is? Torres looked between them, his tone cold and tired. Someone in your chain of command leaked the black tide coordinates to enemy forces. The ambush wasn't random. It was planned. And the same man is still here, in this very base.
Ow.
Ryan's grip tightened. You expect me to believe that? Lena stepped forward. He's telling the truth. I've seen the erased files. Command is watching us even now. Ryan turned toward her sharply. And you didn't think to tell me? She met his gaze. Would you have believed me? For a long moment, the three stood in silence, the sound of rain hitting the metal roof filling the air. Finally, Torres spoke. I can prove it. But once you see the evidence, you'll both be targets. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small hard drive sealed in plastic. This contains the mission logs, unedited. It names the man who gave the order to sacrifice Ghost 6 and the entire Alpha team. Lena's hands shook as she took it. She could feel years of pain burning in her chest. Who was it? She whispered. Torres' face darkened. The current camp director, General Mason. Orion's head snapped up. That's impossible. Mason's a hero. He led half our training ops. Torres looked at him sadly. He also sold information for millions. And when Ghost 6 found out, Mason made sure no one came back alive. Lightning flashed through the windows, thunder shaking the shed. Ryan lowered his gun, disbelief washing over him. Lena stood frozen, staring at the drive in her hand, the proof she'd spent years chasing. Before anyone could speak, a sharp click echoed from outside. Then, gunfire. Bullets tore through the wooden walls. The lantern shattered. Down, Ryan shouted, pulling Lena to the ground. Torres ducked behind a crate, firing back through the broken door. Someone shouted from the darkness, "No one leaves alive." The attackers wore black faces hidden, moving like trained assassins. Ryan fired 3 quick shots, taking one down. Lena rolled behind the table, reloading fast. Torres threw her a second clip. Take the east side. They're surrounding us. Rain poured through the holes in the roof as the fight raged. Muzzle flashes lit the room like lightning. Ryan shouted, "How the hell did they find us?" Torres growled. Mason must have traced the radio signal. He knows you're with me now. Lena's heart pounded. Then we finish this. She stepped out from cover, firing precise bursts. 1 shot, 1 target. Her movements were like muscle memory, flawless. Ryan covered her flank, shouting orders like old times. When the last gun fell silent, only the rain remained. Smoke filled the shed. Torres was bleeding from his shoulder, but alive. Ryan rushed to him. We need to move now. Torres grabbed Lena's arm. Take the drive. Get out of here. If Mason catches you with it, it's over. Lena hesitated. I can't leave you. He gave a weak smile. You already lost one partner, Viper. Don't lose another mission. She swallowed hard and nodded. Ryan threw the drive into his pocket. We'll get you help.
Oh!
But Torres shook his head. Go, I'll hold them off. Ryan wanted to argue, but Lena grabbed his hand. He's right. They ran into the storm, as Torres stayed behind, reloading one last time. Outside, the forest was chaos. Flames from the gunfire flickered between trees. Sirens blared in the distance. The base was waking up. Ryan and Lena sprinted through the mud, soaked and breathless. Every sound behind them felt like pursuit. Every flash of light like a gun pointed at their backs. When they finally reached the fence, Ryan cut through it with his knife. They slipped out and hid behind a rock formation overlooking the coast. Both of them were drenched, trembling, adrenaline racing. You realize what this means? She nodded slowly. We're fugitives now. He exhaled hard, rain dripping from his hair. You could have told me from the start. Her voice was quiet. You were part of command. I had to be sure. He stared at her for a long moment. then finally said, "Well, now you're sure." Lena looked toward the base, red lights flashing in the distance. "Torres said the drive has the proof. If Mason finds it before we do, he'll erase everything." Ryan's eyes hardened. "Then we stop him." For the first time, their goals were one. No longer commander and recruit, but two soldiers chasing the same ghost. Hours later, a helicopter lifted off from the camp's helipad. Inside, General Mason sat quietly, his face cold. A soldier handed him a phone. "Sir, the target escaped." Mason's eyes narrowed. "Viper 1 and Ryan?" "Yes, sir." "Admiral Torres is presumed dead." Mason stared out the window into the night. "Find them. Before they find me." He ended the call and leaned back in his seat, whispering to himself, "Viper 1 should have stayed dead." Down by the cliffs, Lena stood beside Ryan, watching the lights fade in the distance. The drive was safe in Ryan's hand. But deep down, she knew the war was just beginning. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Ghost 6. I'm getting close. I promise." Ryan looked at her. "Who was he?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes filled with pain. "He was my partner." "And the man they betrayed to cover their crime?" The wind howled, carrying away her words into the dark sea. Behind them, thunder rolled again, louder, closer. The storm wasn't over. It was only the beginning. The night was silent except for the soft hum of the wind brushing across the training base. But inside Lena's mind, another world came alive, one filled with dust, fire, and the sound of bullets. Ryan's question from earlier echoed in her head. "Who trained you?" She hadn't answered. But now, as she sat alone under the moonlight, the memories came flooding back. Memories she had tried to bury. 2 years ago. The desert heat was burning everything around her. Sandstorms blurred the horizon, and radio signals were dead. Lena was part of a covert rescue mission that was never supposed to exist. They called her Viper 1. No one knew her real name. She worked under the radar, leading a small, specialized strike team of 5. Their task, to rescue captured officers from an enemy stronghold deep inside. Hostile territory. But the mission went wrong before it even started. Their helicopter was hit in midair. 3 soldiers died before they could even land, only Lena and 1 wounded. Medics survived the crash. The sand burned her skin as she crawled out of the wreck. She could barely breathe, her uniform torn, her arm bleeding. The medic, a young man named Carter, was unconscious. She dragged him under the wreckage and checked his pulse. Still alive. Barely. The radio crackled. All she heard was static. Command had gone silent. Backup was gone. For most people, that was the end. For Lena, it was the beginning. She tore her sleeve to bandage Carter's wound, then took out a small metal badge from her vest. It read, V1. She stared at it for a second, then tucked it back. That badge wasn't just a tag. It was a promise. She picked up her rifle, checked her compass, and began walking toward the enemy base alone. By midnight, she reached a ridge overlooking the compound, a heavily guarded fortress surrounded by trucks and barbed wire. Dozens of armed men patrolled the area. Lena lay on her stomach, breathing slow. She counted each guard, memorized the routes, and watched how the lights flickered every 20 seconds. A small window of darkness. That was all she needed. When the lights went out again, she moved. Silent. Fast. Precise. She used her knife, not her gun. 1 guard down. Then another. By the time the floodlights turned back on, she had already slipped inside the compound, inside a metal shed. She found them for captured U.S. officers, tied, bruised, and weak. One of them looked up with tired eyes. Who are you?" She whispered, "Viper 1. I'm here to take you home." But before she could cut the last rope, the alarm blared. Guards poured in, shouting orders, firing wildly. Bullets tore through the air. Lena dove behind a steel drum, dragging 1 officer with her. She tossed a smoke grenade, grabbed Carter's radio, and tried one last signal. "This is Viper 1. Hostages secured. Need extraction now. Static then. Finally a voice. Viper 1. Hold position. Reinforcements inbound. She smiled faintly. Took you long enough? The next 15 minutes were chaos. She fought like a storm. Every shot precise. Every move planned. She guided the hostages toward the outer gate, using shadows and smoke for cover. When a guard aimed at the youngest soldier, she jumped in front and took the hit, a bullet grazing her shoulder. She didn't flinch, just gritted her teeth and kept moving. By dawn, the rescue chopper finally arrived. The wind from its blades lifted dust into the air. Covering her blood-stained uniform, Carter, now half awake, looked at her and whispered, "You saved us all." "Who are you really?" She just smiled and said, "Nobody important. Just Viper 1." Then she disappeared into the dust before anyone could stop her. Back at the training base, Lena blinked, pulling herself out of the memory. The moon still shone quietly above. She looked at her reflection in the dark window, calm, composed, unreadable. No one here knew what she had done. No one knew that the rookie they laughed at had once led an impossible mission alone, and she preferred it that way, because real soldiers didn't need applause. They just needed silence and purpose. But what she didn't know was that someone had found out. Inside the control room, 2 senior officers were looking through old classified files. And in one of those files, a black folder marked Viper 1. They saw her face. The next morning, everything at the base would change. Morning came quietly over the Navy SEAL camp. The sun was still low, painting the training field in soft gold. The soldiers were already assembling, running drills, shouting commands, trying to wake up their tired bodies. But one man wasn't joining them. Commander Ryan stood in the briefing room, staring at a folder on the table. The black folder had no name, only a single word stamped across it in red ink, classified. Inside were pictures, mission logs, and reports that didn't seem real. Every line pointed to one person. Codename, Viper 1. Status, active. Missions completed, 27. Confirmed saves, 93. And at the bottom, a photograph. Her face, Lena Ryan's throat went dry. His fingers tightened on the edge of the folder. He whispered to himself, almost in disbelief, Viper 1. That was her? He flipped through more pages, reports from the desert mission, the hostage rescue, the helicopter crash. The same woman they had all mocked for being too soft had once led entire operations alone. She wasn't a rookie. She was a ghost, a legend from the shadows. Outside, Lena was on the training field, calm as ever. She was helping a younger recruit fix his rifle grip. Her voice was patient, soft, almost kind. But behind that calm, Ryan saw something new now. Quiet strength, built from scars no one could see. He walked toward her slowly. The air between them was heavy. "Lena," he said.
"Yes."
His tone unusually serious. She turned, surprised by the way he spoke her name. "Yes, sir." He stared at her for a moment, searching her eyes. "Why didn't you tell anyone who you are?" Her face didn't change. "Who I am doesn't matter here, sir. Only what I do." Ryan frowned. "You could have earned instant respect if people knew. You could have avoided all this ridicule." Lena gave a small, tired smile. "Respect that comes from fear isn't real, Commander. I'd rather earn it." He opened the folder in front of her. "You are Viper 1, he said quietly. Her smile faded. She looked down at the papers, the pictures from her past. After a long silence, she nodded once. "Yes, I was." Ryan stepped closer. "You led that desert rescue alone. You were the one who pulled out for officers under fire." "I didn't do it alone," she said softly. "The wind was on my side." He couldn't help but chuckle at her humility. "You're something else. You know that." Lena looked up at him, her eyes calm and steady. "I'm just a soldier, Commander. No more, no less." There was a pause, a long, quiet one that seemed to carry the weight of everything they'd misunderstood about her. Finally, Ryan spoke again. "When you first walked in, I thought you were weak. Lena nodded. You weren't wrong. I was weak once. But weakness teaches you how to fight smarter. Folded his arms. Why come here? After all that? You've already done more than most of us ever will. She glanced around the training field, the young recruits, the laughter, the drills. I came to remind myself where I started. And maybe to see if I still belong? Ryan looked at her, speechless for a moment. Then he said quietly, You belong more than anyone here, Viper One. Lena's tone turned sharp. Don't call me that. That name belongs to the past. For the first time, Ryan saw not just strength, but pain in her eyes. Pain she hid behind silence and discipline. He nodded slowly. All right. Lena, then? She picked up her training helmet and started walking back toward the obstacle field. Before she walked away, she stopped and said, Commander, the past doesn't make us who we are. The choices we make now do. And then she was gone. Ryan watched her walk away, her back straight, every step calm and deliberate. The soldiers who once mocked her now stared in quiet respect. He closed the folder and whispered to himself, Guess the legend isn't gone after all. That evening, Ryan gathered the team for a surprise announcement. Tomorrow, they would face the fire drill, the toughest field test in the camp. A test that simulated real combat conditions, and for the first time, Lena would lead. As the sun set behind the mountains, Ryan stood near the flagpole and watched her from a distance. The quiet trainee who everyone laughed at now carried the weight of a team on her shoulders. He could see it clearly now, the way she moved. The way she commanded, the way she belonged. The legend of Viper One was alive. And tomorrow, everyone would see it. The next morning, the camp was alive before sunrise. Boots stomped on the ground. Metal clanged. Orders echoed through the cold air. It was the day of the fire drill, the hardest training simulation in the Navy SEAL program. It was designed to feel like real combat. Explosions, smoke, confusion, everything. Most trainees dreaded this day. But Lena stood calm, her expression steady as the wind swept through her short brown hair. She wasn't afraid. She had seen the real thing. Commander Ryan briefed the squad. His voice was firm but clear. Listen up. Today is not just about strength. It's about control, teamwork, and survival. You'll move through 4 zones: obstacle course, smoke trench, live fire, and extraction. One mistake can cost your entire team. He paused, scanning the faces. And this time, your team leader is Lena. There was a ripple of whispers. Some soldiers exchanged glances, half surprised, half doubtful. But Ryan's look silenced them. He turned to Lena. You ready, Sergeant? She nodded once. Always, sir, the horn blared. The exercise began. The team sprinted toward the first obstacle, climbing ropes, crawling under barbed wire and running through mud. At first, everyone struggled to follow her pace. Lena was fast, but methodical. She didn't waste movements. When one soldier slipped, she didn't shout. She simply turned, grabbed his arm, and pulled him up. Move steady, she said calmly. We win as one. By the time they reached the smoke trench, visibility dropped to almost nothing. Thick gray smoke filled the air, stinging their eyes and burning their throats. A recruit coughed violently, losing direction. Can't see anything? He gasped. Lena reached for his shoulder and guided him forward. Follow my voice, she said. Breathe slow. Count your steps. Her voice cut through the panic, low, firm, steady. Even Ryan, watching from the control tower, felt something shift. She wasn't leading like a commander. She was leading like someone who had been there before. Then came the live fire zone. It was the most dangerous part of the drill. Real bullets fired above, their heads as they crawled through open ground. Down, Lena ordered. Everyone hit the dirt. The sound of gunfire roared around them. A young soldier, barely 20, froze in fear halfway through. His hands trembled. He couldn't move. Lena noticed immediately. She crawled back to him under the whistling bullets, her face covered in mud. Look at me, she said firmly. You're okay? Breathe in. Breathe out. Now move when I move. He nodded, shaking. Together, they crawled through, inch by inch, until they reached safety. When they emerged, she didn't scold him. She just patted his shoulder and said, "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving anyway." Ryan watched from above, speechless. He had seen hundreds of trainees break under pressure, but never had he seen someone carry others through it so calmly. He leaned toward the radio operator beside him. "How's her team doing?" "Best coordination we've seen this year, sir," the operator replied. "They're beating the average time by 15 minutes. Ryan nodded slowly. "Of course they are." The final stage was the extraction zone, a simulated explosion area where they had to rescue a dummy wounded soldier. Under heavy distraction fire, the team rushed in, but before Lena could issue an order, a thunderous boom ripped through the ground. The blast wasn't simulated. The earth shook violently. "Explosion in Sector 3. A voice yelled through the radio. Ryan's eyes widened. That wasn't part of the drill. Smoke and dust filled the area. Real fire spread fast. The soldiers panicked, shouting, trying to find cover. "Everyone down!" Lena shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos. "Check for injuries." A second explosion followed, smaller but close enough to knock 2 men to the ground. Ryan grabbed a radio. "Pull them out. That area's live." But the operator's voice came back in shock. "Sir, she's not retreating." Lena moved through the fire, coughing but focused. One soldier was trapped under a fallen beam. Another was too dazed to move. She tore off her vest, wrapped her arm with cloth, and lifted the beam with all her strength. The soldier slid free, gasping for air. "Can you walk?" she asked. He nodded weakly. I think so." "Good, get him out," she ordered the others. "I'll cover you." She grabbed the injured man's rifle and fired a signal flare, marking their position through the smoke. From the control tower, Ryan's heart pounded. He saw her silhouette, small, calm, moving through the burning debris like a ghost. He turned to the rescue team. "Send medics now." "She's holding the line alone." Lena's earpiece crackled. "Viper 1, fall back." Her breath caught. No one here should have known that name. It was Ryan's voice. She smiled faintly. "Copy that, Commander. Extraction complete." And then she ran, guiding the last 2 soldiers out as the medics arrived. When they reached safety, the recruits collapsed, coughing and shaking. Lena sat down last, her uniform singed, her face streaked with soot. Ryan rushed over. "Are you insane? That explosion wasn't part of the exercise. You could have been killed." She looked up at him calmly. "They could have too." He stared at her, furious, amazed, and deeply moved all at once. Then, finally, he said quietly, "You really are Viper 1. She gave a small smile. "I told you, Commander. Names don't matter." The medics checked everyone. No serious injuries. The team, still shaken, looked at her with new eyes filled with respect, not pity. One young soldier saluted her shakily. "Ma'am, thank you. You saved us." She nodded, her voice soft. "You saved yourselves. I just reminded you how." As the smoke cleared and the last fires burned out, Ryan stood beside her, looking at the wrecked field. "You turned a disaster into a rescue," he said. Lena's eyes followed the sunrise over the camp. "Sometimes, Commander, chaos is the best teacher." Ryan smiled faintly. "And you're the best student I've ever met." The next morning, the training field was unusually quiet. There was no laughter, no jokes, no mocking whispers, only silence. The kind of silence that comes after everyone has seen something unforgettable. Lena walked across the field, her uniform still carrying faint marks of soot from the explosion. Her arm was bandaged, but she moved as if it didn't matter. The soldiers she passed didn't laugh anymore. They didn't even look away. They stood straight, eyes following her with quiet respect. Even those who once called her the weak recruit now nodded as she walked by. Something had changed. Commander Ryan stood near the observation tower watching it all. He saw the way the men reacted, how they stepped aside, how they listened when she spoke. No one gave her that authority. She earned it. Ryan smiled faintly. About time they saw what I see now, he muttered under his breath. Later that morning, the whole squad was called for a debrief. The explosion from the day before had caused real damage to part of the field. But everyone had made it out alive thanks to Lena's quick decisions when she entered the briefing room. The chatter stopped. Ryan stood at the front with the senior officers. He cleared his throat. Yesterday's exercise turned into a real emergency. And yet no one was lost. You all came back, turned toward Lena. That was because of one person. Someone who kept her calm when the rest of us lost it. The room went silent. Ryan continued. Sergeant Lena didn't just save lives, she led like a soldier who's already seen the battlefield. Her leadership turned chaos into order. He looked directly at her and said, "The Navy calls people like her legends. But she just calls herself a trainee." Lena looked down, uncomfortable with the attention. "I just did what I was trained to do, sir." Ryan shook his head. "No, you did what few ever could." When the meeting ended, the recruits gathered around her outside. A few of them, the same ones who had once laughed at her on her first day, stepped forward. One spoke first. "Sergeant, we were wrong about you." Lena smiled slightly. "Everyone is wrong sometimes. What matters is what you learn after," another recruit added. "You didn't just lead us. You saved us. We'll follow you anywhere now." Her eyes softened. "Then follow the mission. It's not me." A true team doesn't need heroes, just people who don't give up. Word of her bravery spread quickly through the base. Even officers who barely noticed her name before were now speaking about the woman who led through real fire. By evening, the training field was buzzing again, but this time not with jokes. With determination, with energy, everyone trained harder, ran faster, and gave more effort than before. They had seen what leadership looked like: calm, fearless, selfless. As Lena walked past the obstacle course, one of the younger recruits called out, "Ma'am, are you going to join us for the endurance run?" She stopped, turned, and smiled. "Only if you're ready to lose." The recruits laughed, not mockingly this time, but with admiration. When the horn blew, she ran beside them, her boots hitting the dirt in perfect rhythm. Every soldier tried to keep up, but none could. Even tired and bandaged, she ran like the wind. Ryan watched from a distance, arms crossed, his eyes filled with pride. "She's not just a legend," he murmured. "She's a leader." That night, the campfire flickered in the cool breeze. Some of the men sat around sharing stories, but when Lena walked by, the entire group fell silent for a second, not out of fear, but respect. Then one of them said quietly, "Hey Lena, you want to join us?" She hesitated, then smiled and sat down. They handed her a cup of coffee. One soldier said, "We still can't believe you ran into real fire for us." She looked into the flames and replied, "You don't leave your team behind. Ever. That's the only rule that matters." The group nodded in silence. In that moment, she wasn't just one of them. She was their soldier. Later, as the fire burned low, Ryan approached from the shadows. "Mind if I join?" he asked. Lena looked up. "Of course, Commander." He sat beside her quietly, watching the flames. "They respect you now," he said. "You've changed this entire camp in a week." Lena's tone was calm. "I didn't change them. They just remembered what being a soldier means." Ryan smiled. "Maybe, but you reminded them." She stared into the glowing embers. "Respect doesn't come from rank, Commander. It comes from trust. Once you have that, you can lead anyone." Ryan nodded slowly. "Well, they trust you now more than anyone here." Lena looked up at the night sky. "Then I hope I don't let them down." As the firelight flickered on her face, Ryan realized something. She wasn't just earning their respect, she was earning his. And deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The following morning dawned clear and bright. But a sense of tension hung over the Navy SEAL base. Rumors had started to spread, quiet whispers among the recruits. Bits of talk over breakfast and in the locker rooms. Someone had seen a message come through from headquarters. A top-ranking general was coming to visit the base unannounced. No one knew why. But everyone had a guess, and every guess led back to one person. Lena. By 0901 hours. The soldiers stood in full formation on the field. The air was crisp, the flag fluttering above them, sunlight bouncing off their polished boots. Commander Ryan stood at the front beside the other officers. His face was calm, but his mind was racing. The last time a general made a surprise visit, it was to deliver either praise or discipline. And Ryan had a strong feeling which one this would be. He glanced at Lena standing quietly in the second row, her posture perfect, her face unreadable as always. The sound of helicopter blades soon filled the air. A black military chopper descended onto the landing pad. Dust and wind whipped across the field as the soldiers saluted. The door opened, and out stepped General Marcus Hale, a man known for his no-nonsense attitude and razor-sharp eyes. He walked with firm steps toward the formation, his medals glinting in the sun. The soldiers stiffened as he passed. He stopped at the front, hands behind his back, and surveyed the camp. At ease, he said. His deep voice carried across the field. The men relaxed slightly, but no one dared to move too much. The general turned toward Commander Ryan. Commander, I heard your team handled a real explosion during a training exercise this week. Ryan nodded. Yes, sir. We had a malfunction with one of the detonators, but the team responded perfectly. General Hale raised an eyebrow. Perfectly. Ryan hesitated. Then, with a slight smile, said, Because of her, sir. He gestured toward Lena. The general's eyes followed his hand and landed on her. For a moment, his stern expression softened, almost like recognition. Step forward, Sergeant, he said. Lena took one step forward, saluted sharply. Sir. The general studied her for a moment, then slowly opened the folder in his hand. The soldiers watched, confused. Ryan's heart pounded. Finally, the general spoke. I wasn't planning to say anything, but after what I've heard, I think these men deserve to know who they're training beside. The field went still. He lifted a document from the folder. 2 years ago, a covert rescue mission was launched in the Middle East. A mission so dangerous that I didn't expect it to succeed. He looked up. 5 went in. 2 came out. 4 hostages were rescued. And every single life saved was because of one soldier, codenamed Viper 1. A murmur rippled through the ranks. Ryan felt his stomach twist. He knew what was coming, but still couldn't believe it. The general continued, his voice steady. That soldier never took public credit. No medals, no interviews, no recognition. Her record was sealed as classified. He turned the paper around. There, printed in bold black letters, Viper 1, Sergeant Lena Carter. Gasps echoed across the field. The soldiers turned toward her, eyes wide, mouths open. Even the ones who had trained beside her every day couldn't hide their shock. Ryan watched her quietly. Her face didn't change. No pride, no embarrassment, just the same calm she always carried. General Hale stepped closer to her. You should have told them who you were, Sergeant. Lena shook her head softly. Respect is earned, sir, not inherited. He stared at her for a long second, then nodded. Still humble as ever, turned back to the formation. This woman, this soldier, saved more lives than most of you can imagine. You laughed at her. You doubted her, but she never broke. Instead, she taught you all what it truly means to lead. Silence. Every soldier stood frozen. Even Ryan felt something in his chest, a strange mix of pride and guilt. Then, General did something no one expected. He reached into the folder and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it, revealing a silver medal gleaming under the sun. This is the Medal of Valor, awarded for courage under fire. Stepped in front of Lena. Sergeant Lena Carter, Viper 1, you've refused this medal twice before. But after what I've seen here, I think you've earned it again. He pinned the medal onto her uniform himself. Lena's lips parted slightly, her eyes glistening for just a moment. She saluted. Thank you, sir. The general nodded. The honor is ours, Sergeant. As he walked away, he stopped beside Ryan and said quietly, "You've got a real leader here, Commander. Don't ever lose her." I nodded. "Yes, sir." When the ceremony ended, the soldiers surrounded her. The same men who once mocked her now looked at her like she was something out of a legend. "Ma'am, you were Viper 1?" One of them stammered. Lena smiled faintly. "I still am, just not the kind you think." Another soldier spoke softly, "Why didn't you tell us?" She looked around at them, the faces that had changed from arrogance to respect. "Because I wanted you to see the soldier, not the story." Ryan stepped forward. "Well, now we see both." She smiled at him, quiet and steady. Then, maybe it was worth it. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Lena stood alone near the flagpole, looking out at the horizon. Her medal caught the last rays of sunlight, glowing softly against her uniform. Ryan walked up beside her. "You finally got the recognition you deserve." "Recognition fades, Commander. Respect stays." Ryan smiled. "Then I'd say you've earned both." She looked at him, the faintest smile on her lips. "Maybe, but the mission's not over yet." He raised an eyebrow. "Mission." She turned toward the setting sun, making soldiers out of men who used to laugh. The flag fluttered above them as the day ended, a quiet reminder that true heroes don't need to speak loudly sometimes. They just show up, do their duty, and let their actions write the story for them and Lena. Viper 1 had just written hers. The camp was quiet that night. The air was cooler than usual, filled with the sound of waves crashing softly beyond the training fields. Most of the recruits had gone to bed early, still processing the revelation that they're quiet. Calm teammate, the woman they had laughed at, was actually Viper 1, one of the most decorated covert operatives in military history. But Commander Ryan couldn't sleep. Not after what he had seen, not after the way he had treated her. He sat alone in his office, a small desk lamp casting a warm yellow glow over the paperwork he wasn't really reading. Every memory of Lena replayed in his mind the first time she stepped into the camp, the way he'd mocked her calm attitude, the jokes he made behind her back, the disbelief in her abilities. And then, the way she handled the explosion. The way she led others without shouting. The way she stayed humble even after the general revealed her true identity. She hadn't changed. He had. A soft knock came at the door. Ryan looked up. "Come in." Lena stepped inside, still in her uniform, though her hair was slightly loose from the day's wind. Her expression was calm, as always. "Commander," she said, giving a respectful nod. Ryan stood, gesturing to the chair. "Sit, Sergeant." She sat down quietly, hands resting on her knees. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them carried the weight of everything that had happened. Ryan finally broke it. "I owe you an apology." Lena looked up, surprised but silent. He continued, his voice low. "When you first came here, I judged you. Not because of your skill, but because of how you looked. Because you were quiet. Because I thought, you didn't belong here." Gave a bitter laugh. "Turns out, I didn't know who I was talking to." Lena tilted her head slightly. "Respect isn't about rank or reputation, sir. You saw what most people see: weakness. I've seen it my whole career." Ryan shook his head. "No, it wasn't weakness. I was blind to strength that didn't shout." He paused, his voice softening. "When the explosion happened, I froze for a second. But you," he pointed toward her, "you didn't even hesitate. You saved 2 men's lives before I even gave the order." She looked down briefly. "Training. Instinct." Ryan smiled faintly. "No, heart. You've got something the rest of us forgot somewhere along the way." There was a long pause. The sound of the ocean drifted in through the open window. Ryan finally said, "When General Hale called you Viper 1, I realized I'd been trying to lead a soldier who's been leading others long before I met her." Lena looked at him with calm eyes. "Leadership isn't about control, Commander. It's about trust." He nodded slowly. "Then I'd like to start earning yours." She didn't speak for a while. Her gaze softened, thoughtful. "Maybe you already did," she said finally. Ryan leaned back, exhaling deeply. The weight on his chest lifted slightly. "I still can't believe you turned down that medal twice before today," he said, trying to lighten the mood. Lena smiled faintly. It's just metal, sir. The real reward is when the people you protect get to go home. Hi. He nodded, quiet for a moment. You know, after all this, the men look at you differently now. Lena raised an eyebrow. Do they? Ryan chuckled. They've been trying to imitate your calm during drills. I even caught one of them saying, "What would Viper One do?" Lena actually laughed, a quiet, genuine laugh that Ryan hadn't heard before. Well, she said softly, as long as they're learning something. Ryan hesitated before asking, Why did you come back to training, Lena? You could have stayed in command or retired with honors. Why put yourself through this again? Her eyes grew distant, thoughtful. Because I wanted to remember what it feels like to be one of them, she said. To feel the struggle again. The fear, the doubt. To remember what it takes to rise above it. She looked directly at him. You can't lead soldiers if you forget what it's like to be one. Ryan stared at her for a long time, then nodded slowly. Maybe that's what makes you Viper One, he said quietly. There was another pause, not uncomfortable, but filled with mutual understanding. Ryan finally stood and said, Tomorrow, I want you to run the morning drill. Lena blinked. Me, yes, he said firmly. You'll lead it. The men need to learn what real leadership looks like. She hesitated, then nodded respectfully. Yes, Commander. As she stood to leave, Ryan stopped her. Lena, he said softly, for what it's worth, I'm proud to have you in my unit. She turned to face him, eyes steady, but kind. And I'm proud to serve in yours, sir. Then she saluted and walked out into the night. Ryan stood by the window, watching her disappear across the field toward the barracks. He could still hear the ocean beyond the training ground, endless, steady, powerful, for the first time in years. He felt something shift inside him, not pride, not guilt, something deeper, respect. Not for Viper One, the legend, but for Lena Carter, the soldier who never needed to prove anything to anyone. The next morning, before sunrise, the Navy SEAL training ground was already alive with movement. Fog drifted across the field, mixing with the chill of dawn. The only sound was the crunch of boots on gravel as soldiers lined up, adorning, stretching, getting ready for another brutal day. But today felt different. Word had spread Sergeant Lena Carter was leading the drills. The same men who once laughed behind her back now stood straighter than ever. Helmets polished, gear in perfect order. Even the usually careless recruits avoided making jokes. Something about her calm, quiet authority had changed everything. Commander Ryan stood to the side with his arms folded, watching. He wanted to see how she would handle it. He had no idea what to expect, and that made him even more curious. Then, from across the field, Lena appeared. She wasn't shouting orders. She wasn't trying to look intimidating. She simply walked, steady, confident, with her usual quiet focus. But somehow, the entire group went silent the moment she arrived. Her presence commanded respect without a single word. Good morning, she said calmly. Standing in front of the squad, Good morning, ma'am. They replied in unison, louder than usual, sharper too. She gave a small nod. Today we're not training for strength. We're training for control. The soldiers glanced at each other, confused. Control? What did that mean in SEAL training? Lena continued, her tone even. When chaos hits, when everything goes wrong, it's not the loudest man who survives. It's the one who can stay calm when others panic. She looked at them, her gaze steady. Let's see who can do that today. The first exercise was the obstacle course, the same one that had humiliated her on her first day. This time, she ran it with them. Mud splashed as she sprinted forward, her movements fluid and precise. The soldiers behind her tried to keep up. Pushing harder than ever, she climbed, rolled, crawled, and jumped with perfect rhythm, not rushing, not competing, just focused. When one soldier slipped on the wall and nearly fell, Lena was already there. Catching his arm before he hit the ground, Breathe, she said calmly. You're not weak, you're just panicking. Focus on your next move. The man nodded, breathing deeply, then climbed again. This time, he made it over. Ryan watched from a distance, quietly impressed. She wasn't yelling, But every soldier obeyed her instantly. Next came endurance runs. 10 miles across sand dunes with full packs, brutal even for trained men. Halfway through, one recruit, Davis, started slowing down, panting heavily. Lena dropped back beside him, matching his pace. "You think you can't go on?" she asked, her voice steady. He nodded weakly. "Ma'am, I'm done." She didn't argue. Instead, she said, "Then take one more step." He looked at her. "What?" "One more step," she repeated. "Just that. Forget the rest. You don't need 10 miles. You just need one more step." Davis hesitated, then took it, then another, and another. By the time they reached the finish line, he was still running. Lena smiled faintly. "See? You didn't quit. You just stopped doubting." After the run, the men gathered for their next exercise, underwater endurance. Lena demonstrated how to stay calm under pressure. Literally. She submerged herself, holding her breath longer than any of them could imagine. When she finally surfaced, she didn't gasp or flinch, just smiled calmly and said, "You don't conquer fear by fighting it. You conquer it by understanding it." Her words hit harder than any motivational speech. By midday, the soldiers were exhausted but strangely energized. They were pushing harder, learning faster, working together better than ever. Even Ryan noticed it. The entire team had transformed in a single morning. The same recruits who once bragged and joked were now focused. Following Lena's lead with complete respect, he approached her during the break. "You've done in one morning what I couldn't do in 3 months," he said quietly. Lena wiped a bit of mud from her sleeve, smiling. "They just needed to believe in themselves, sir. Sometimes the hardest part of training isn't the body, it's the mind." Ryan nodded. "You've got a way of making them see that." In the afternoon, the final drill began. A teamwork simulation under stress. A mock mission with fake gunfire, smoke, and explosions. It was meant to test how the soldiers performed when everything fell apart. Ryan watched carefully. He wanted to see how they'd react, especially under Lena's command. The alarms blared. Smoke filled the field. The recruits started shouting orders, confusion rising fast. Then, Lena's voice cut through the chaos, calm but commanding. "Team Bravo, take cover. Alpha, flank right. Stay low, watch your corners." Her tone was precise, confident, unshakable. Within seconds, the confusion disappeared. The soldiers moved like one body, sharp, coordinated, unstoppable. Even the fake enemy instructors were surprised at how fast the group adapted. When the simulation ended, they had completed the entire mission flawlessly, something no trainee team had done in months. As the dust settled, the men looked around at each other, stunned. They had done it. Ryan clapped his hands once. "Best performance this camp's seen in years?" The men cheered, tired but proud. Lena stood quietly among them, a faint smile on her face. One soldier, Harper, stepped forward, saluted, and said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry for what I said on your first day." Another followed, "Me too, ma'am." And then another soon. Every man in the squad stood saluting her. Lena's eyes softened. Apology accepted. "But remember, respect isn't about who's right. It's about who's willing to learn." They nodded. Every one of them knew she was right. That night, as the sun set and the camp quieted down, Ryan walked up beside her again. "They'd follow you anywhere now," he said softly. Lena looked toward the horizon. "I don't want them to follow me, Commander. I want them to become leaders themselves." Ryan nodded slowly. "Looks like they already started," Lena smiled. "Then my job's done for today." She walked away toward the barracks, her figure fading in the golden light, calm, strong, unstoppable, and Ryan knew. Deep down, that Viper one wasn't just a soldier. She was the kind of leader every soldier secretly hoped to become. 2. Weeks had passed since Lena had taken over the morning drills, and the transformation across the Navy SEAL camp was impossible to ignore. The soldiers were sharper, faster, and calmer under pressure. Even Commander Ryan admitted quietly, but sincerely, that she had reshaped the entire unit. But in the military, peace never lasts long. Every calm morning is just the silence before a storm. And the storm was about to hit. It began as a routine day. The recruits were in the middle of weapons drills when the base alarm suddenly blared, loud, urgent, and real. Red lights flashed. Sirens wailed. Within seconds, soldiers dropped what they were doing and ran to their positions. Simulation. One of them shouted. Ryan's voice echoed over the field. No announcement was scheduled. This isn't a drill. The words hit like lightning. Lena was already sprinting toward the command center. "Commander, what's happening?" she asked, her voice steady despite the noise. Ryan checked the monitor, his eyes narrowing. Unidentified vessel offshore. Could be a test, could be worse. She leaned over the radar. Distance. For miles. Moving fast. Lena's expression hardened. That's not a drill. That's an infiltration. Ryan looked at her, then at the soldiers scrambling outside. "How do you want to handle it, Sergeant?" She didn't hesitate. "Give me Bravo team. Full gear. We move now." Within minutes, Lena and 6 soldiers, the same ones who once laughed at her, were armed, geared up, and loading into a small boat. Ryan watched from the dock. Trusting her completely, the sky had turned gray, waves crashing harder against the shore. Wind whipped across the water as Lena stood at the front of the boat, eyes locked on the horizon. "Remember," she said over the engine's roar, "we stay quiet, stay sharp, and stay together. No hero moves." "Ma'am, yes, ma'am." They shouted back as they approached the vessel. It became clear this was no ordinary ship. The hull bore no markings. The radar signal had no ID. It looked like a ghost. Silent, black, drifting toward restricted waters. Lena raised her hand, signaling for silence. The boat engine cut off. They drifted closer. Through her binoculars, she saw movement. 2 figures on deck, masked, carrying equipment. "Unauthorized operation," she whispered. "Could be smugglers, could be spies." She signaled 2 men to flank left, 2 to the rear. Then she climbed silently up the side of the vessel. On deck, the scene was tense. Crates marked with military codes were scattered across the floor, stolen equipment. The masked men were loading something into a crate. Lena's instincts kicked in. This was no coincidence. Someone had breached Navy supply lines. She crouched low, raised her hand, signaling to her team. "Move in." They surrounded the men in seconds. "Drop your weapons," Lena shouted. The men froze, then suddenly turned, guns raised. Gunfire exploded across the deck. Bullets ripped through metal and air. The soldiers took cover behind crates, returning fire. "Stay low," Lena ordered. "Cover left flank." One of her soldiers, Davis, was hit in the shoulder and dropped behind a crate, groaning. "Ma'am, I'm hit." Lena crawled toward him through the smoke, ignoring the bullets flying overhead. She tore a strip from her sleeve, tied it tightly around his wound, and dragged him to cover. "You're fine," she said firmly. "You're not going anywhere until I say." He looked at her through pain. "Why'd you come back from me?" Her voice was calm, steady, the voice of someone who had seen too many battles to panic. Because a leader never leaves her soldier behind. The firefight continued for minutes that felt like hours. Finally, one masked man tried to escape through the side ladder. Lena sprinted after him, sliding across the deck, and tackled him to the ground. The mask fell off, revealing a face she didn't expect. A U.S. contractor. Her eyes widened. "You're not an enemy. Your Navy's support," the man sneered. "Not anymore. We're taking what we deserve." Lena's jaw tightened. "Not on my watch." She disarmed him in seconds, locking his arms and forcing him down until reinforcements arrived from the base. Back on shore, Ryan met them as they disembarked. The team was wet, bruised, and exhausted, but alive. 2 prisoners were in custody. Ryan walked straight up to Lena. "What was that?" he demanded. "Inside job," she replied quietly. "Contractors smuggling classified equipment through our channels." Ryan's face darkened. "And you found them before they vanished." "They would have been gone in 10 minutes. He stared at her for a moment, then said softly, "You just saved this base." Viper 1. The soldiers behind her exchanged glances, respect, pride, and disbelief written across their faces. Davis stepped forward, clutching his bandaged shoulder. "Ma'am, I thought this was going to be just another mission." "But you," he paused, his voice thick. "You risked everything for us." Lena looked at him, her tone gentle but firm. "That's what soldiers do, Davis. We protect each other, no matter what."
At.
The men nodded silently. No more jokes. No more doubt. Only loyalty. That night, as the base settled down, Ryan found her standing by the docks again, staring out at the dark ocean. "You handled it perfectly," he said. "You could have been killed." She smiled faintly. "So could they. That's why I didn't hesitate." Ryan folded his arms. "You've earned every ounce of their loyalty now. They'd walk into fire for you." Lena looked at him, her voice soft. "I don't want them to walk into fire for me. I want them to walk with me." Ryan smiled. "That's why you're different?" The wind shifted, carrying the sound of waves crashing against the shore. Lena's eyes remained on the horizon. "Commander," she said quietly, "something tells me this isn't over." Ryan frowned. "What do you mean?" She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Men like those contractors don't act alone. Someone higher is pulling the strings." Ryan's face hardened. "Then we'll find them." Lena nodded slowly. "We will." As the night deepened, one thing was clear. The mission had ended. But a new battle was just beginning, and this time, Viper 1 wasn't just proving herself. She was protecting something far bigger, her entire team, and the honor they had learned to believe in. The next morning, the Navy SEAL base felt heavier than usual. Even though the infiltration had been stopped, the tension in the air was thick, the kind of silence that hides a secret. The men went through their drills as usual, but every conversation was hushed. Everyone knew something wasn't right. Lena felt it too. She could sense it in the way people avoided eye contact, in the way conversations stopped when she entered a room. Someone knew more than they were saying, and if her instincts were right, the danger hadn't ended last night. It had only started. Commander Ryan called a meeting in the briefing room. Lena sat at the far end of the table, beside the other senior officers. Ryan's tone was clipped. "Last night's incident wasn't random. The contractors we caught weren't acting alone. Someone on this base authorized their clearance." The room went dead silent. A murmur ran through the officers. Lena's jaw tightened. "So it's an inside job," Ryan nodded grimly. "We're running full security audits, but whoever it is, they're smart." "Covered their tracks well?" Lena leaned forward, her voice calm but cold. "Then they've been here long enough to know how to hide." Hours later, Lena was in the weapons bay, checking the inventory logs. Every box, every serial number, every record. She noticed something odd. 3 crates had been marked as relocated, but no destination was listed. When she pulled up the digital log, the access code belonged to someone she knew. Lieutenant Harris, a friend of Ryan's. The same man who had greeted her on her first day. The one who used to smirk whenever she trained. Her eyes narrowed. That evening, she quietly went to Ryan's office. "Commander," she said, closing the door behind her, "you need to see this." Ryan looked up from his desk as she placed the printed access log in front of him. He frowned. "Harris, that can't be right." "He's been with me for years." Lena crossed her arms. "Which is exactly why no one would suspect him." Ryan hesitated. "He vouched for half the recruits here. He's been handling transport clearance," she said evenly. "If someone wanted to move stolen gear, that's the perfect cover." Ryan ran a hand through his hair, disbelief clouding his face. "I can't just accuse him without proof." Lena nodded. "Then let's get proof." That night, Lena set her plan into motion. She and Davis hid in the shadows near the loading docks, where military shipments were prepped for transfer. The clock ticked past midnight. The base was quiet, too quiet. Then they saw it. A lone figure moved toward the dock, carrying a small data case. He scanned the security lock, and the gate opened. Lena raised her binoculars. It was Harris. Her stomach turned cold. She motioned to Davis. Stay low. No sound. Harris opened one of the crates, pulled out several encrypted drives, and placed them in the case. Then he looked around and took out his phone. Lena could hear faintly from her position. Yeah, it's done. I'll have it ready by morning. Tell your man to meet at the old dockside. She exchanged a look with Davis. He's selling classified data. Davis whispered, orders. Lena's eyes hardened. We follow him. They trailed Harris through the dark storage corridors, keeping to the shadows. He was careful, checking corners, listening for footsteps. But Lena was quieter. When he reached the outer fence, he signaled someone beyond the shadows. A black SUV pulled up, headlights off. That's when Lena stepped out. Going somewhere, Lieutenant? Harris froze. The case slipped from his hand, clattering on the pavement. He turned slowly, trying to recover his composure. Sergeant Carter. You shouldn't be out here. I could say the same about you, she replied coldly. You're stealing from your own base. He smirked, but there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. You don't understand, Carter. You think you're saving this place, but it's already corrupt. I'm just cashing out before it all burns. Lena's voice dropped to steel. Not on my watch. The SUV engine roared to life and a masked driver raised a gun. Lena dove for cover, firing a warning shot that blew out the car's tire. Davis shouted, He's getting away. Harris ran toward the fence, but Lena was faster. She tackled him to the ground, pinning his arm behind his back. He struggled, shouting, You don't know what you're fighting for. She leaned close, her voice ice cold. I know exactly what I'm fighting for. Loyalty, honor, and every soldier you just betrayed. He stopped struggling. Minutes later, Ryan and the security team arrived. Alerted by Davis's call, Ryan's face fell when he saw Harris cuffed on the ground. Tell me it isn't true, he muttered. Lena handed him the stolen data case. He was selling classified intel. Commander. He had outside contacts. Ryan looked down at Harris, disappointment written all over his face. We served together for 10 years, Harris. You had everything. Harris sneered, bitter. Everything except power. You think this system cares about loyalty? You're all fools. Ryan's voice hardened. No, you're the fool who underestimated her. He nodded toward Lena. As the guards dragged Harris away, the men who once mocked Lena stood silently watching her. They didn't see just a soldier now, they saw the person who had saved the base twice. Davis muttered quietly to the others. That's why they call her Viper 1. She strikes before the enemy even blinks. Lena didn't smile. Her eyes were on the horizon again, the faint glow of dawn beginning to rise. She turned to Ryan. Commander. He mentioned something before we caught him. Something about someone higher. Ryan's expression darkened. You think there's still more? She nodded. I don't think it's over. Whoever he worked for, they're still out there. Ryan looked at her for a long moment. Then we prepare. Together. Lena's voice was calm but certain. Together. As the sun broke over the base, the flag began to rise. A symbol of strength rebuilt through loyalty and truth. But deep down, Lena knew this wasn't the end. This betrayal had only uncovered the surface of something bigger. And soon, Viper 1 would have to face it not just with her strength, but with her heart. The morning after Harris's arrest, the entire Navy SEAL base was locked down. Security teams swept every inch, communications were restricted, and all data systems were rechecked for leaks. But even with all those precautions, Lena knew something still didn't add up. If Harris had outside contacts, that meant he was just a middleman, not the real threat. Someone higher was pulling the strings. Someone still inside, Commander Ryan walked into the control room, his expression grim. Satellite scans confirmed the SUV that showed up last night. It was stolen. No registration, no trace. Whoever Harris was working with knew how to vanish. Lena folded her arms. Then they're not amateurs. This was coordinated. Ryan looked at her. So, what's our move? Her eyes glinted, sharp and calm. We set a trap. Hours later, Lena gathered the intelligence team and the senior officers in the operations hall. We're going to leak fake intel, she said simply. The room went silent. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Fake intel? Lena nodded. Yes. Something valuable enough to bait whoever's behind this. We'll make it look like we're transferring top-secret navigation codes to a remote test site. If the leak is still inside the base, they'll take the bait. Ryan leaned forward. And when they try to steal it, she finished his sentence. We'll be waiting. That evening, the plan went into motion. The team created a dummy data file, labeled Operation Tempest. The mission appeared to be a confidential transfer of prototype drone tech, valuable enough to tempt any infiltrator. Only 3 people knew it was fake: Lena, Ryan, and Davis. Everyone else treated it like a real operation. Schedules, transport routes, clearance codes, all designed to look legitimate. 2 days passed. No movement. Then, on the 3rd night, the alert went off. Someone had tried to access the restricted data using Ryan's personal clearance code. Ryan's eyes widened when the alarm flashed red on the monitor. That's my code. But I never logged in. Lena's voice was calm. Then someone cloned your credentials. She opened the terminal, typing rapidly, tracking the access signal. It's coming from Sector 9, the communication tower. Ryan grabbed his weapon. Let's move. The night was quiet as they approached the tower. Wind whipped through the steel frames. The only sound was the distant hum of servers. Lena motioned for silence. She crouched behind a generator, scanning with her night vision goggles. Then she saw it, a figure moving inside the tower room, pulling cables and inserting a data chip. Davis whispered, "Who is it?" Lena zoomed in. Her heart stopped for a second. It's Chief Donovan. Ryan froze. My communications chief? He's been with me for 15 years. Lena's tone turned low. Then he's the one who's been hiding in plain sight. They approached carefully, keeping their movements silent. Lena's pulse stayed steady. Her focus razor dashed sharp. Donovan didn't notice them as he copied files into the chip, muttering to himself. They think Harris was the leak. Fools. This whole base is already compromised. Lena stepped into the light. Funny, that's exactly what Harris said before we arrested him. Donovan whipped around, eyes wide, gun drawn. Ryan stepped forward beside her. Put it down, Chief. Donovan smirked. I should have known she'd sniff it out. Viper 1, right? You should have stayed out of this. Lena didn't flinch. And you should have stayed loyal. Donovan fired first. The bullet whizzed past Lena's shoulder, shattering a monitor. Ryan returned fire, taking cover behind a steel beam. The room filled with the sharp echo of gunfire and flashing red alarms. Davis flanked from the side, shouting, "He's moving toward the stairwell." Lena sprinted after him. Her boots pounded against the metal steps. Echoing in the narrow shaft, she caught a glimpse of Donovan climbing toward the roof, desperate. Cornered, when she reached the top, the cold wind hit her face. Donovan stood near the edge, holding the chip in one hand and his gun in the other. He sneered, "You think you can stop this? That chip isn't the end. There are others. Other bases. Other leaks. You're just one soldier." Lena's voice was calm but strong. "I'm Viper 1, and one soldier is enough." He aimed his gun, but before he could fire, Lena lunged forward, knocking his arm aside. The two struggled dangerously close to the ledge. The chip slipped from his hand, flying over the edge. Lena twisted his wrist, disarming him and slamming him down hard onto the concrete. Ryan and Davis burst onto the roof seconds later, weapons drawn. Lena stood over Donovan, breathing hard. "It's over." He glared up at her, defeated. "You have no idea what you've started. The people behind this, they won't stop." Ryan stepped closer. "Then they'll meet her next." The next morning, the entire base buzzed with the news. Chief Donovan, trusted leader, communications head, was exposed as a traitor. But more importantly, the team had stopped a major intelligence breach. The men who once mocked Lena now looked at her with nothing but respect. She wasn't just the new trainee anymore. She was Viper 1, the woman who outsmarted spies, exposed traitors, and saved the SEALs twice. Ryan found her standing near the docks, looking out at the rising sun. "You were right again," he said quietly. "I should have listened to you from the start." Lena smiled faintly. "You did. Eventually. He chuckled softly. You realize you just took down 2 infiltrators in 1 week? That's more than some task forces manage in a year. Chu shrugged lightly. I told you, small doesn't mean weak. Ryan's expression grew thoughtful. What will you do next? She looked at the horizon, the morning light glowing across the water. Whatever it takes, she said softly. Because something tells me this story isn't over. A week passed after Chief Donovan's arrest. The Navy SEAL base slowly returned to order, but something still didn't feel right. For most of the team, it was over. But for Lena Carter, known by her old call sign Viper 1, it was only the calm before another storm. Her instincts, the same ones that had saved her countless times before, whispered that the real enemy was still watching. That morning, she stood at the training field, watching the new recruits struggle through obstacle drills. Ryan walked up beside her. You know, he said quietly, they're starting to copy your techniques. Even Davis said he caught one of them using your breathing methods during endurance. Lena smiled faintly. Then they're learning. Ryan tilted his head. You're planning to leave soon, aren't you? She looked at him. You can sense it too, sighed. I knew this was temporary. You're not the type to stay still for long. Before Lena could respond, her COM device beeped, a private, encrypted message. She frowned. This signal, it's old. Military code. Not used since my last Black Ops unit. Ryan raised an eyebrow. From who? Her voice went quiet. From Commander Hale. Ryan's expression shifted. The one who led your team on Operation Serpent? She nodded slowly. The one who went missing 3 years ago. They went to the communications hub, isolating the frequency. Lena played the message. A crackled voice came through the static. Viper 1. If you're hearing this, it means they've found me. The traitors you caught, they're just the tip of the spear. The real leader calls himself Ghost Falcon. He's ex-Navy, and he knows you. Lena's eyes narrowed. They'll come for you next. Trust no one outside your circle. Remember the old protocol. Strike first, and the message cut off. The room went silent. Ryan finally spoke. So Donovan and Harris were working for this. Ghost Falcon. Lena nodded. And if Hale's message is real, then Ghost Falcon's still active and hunting. Ryan clenched his fists. Then we hunt first. Lena shook her head. No, Commander. This is my fight. He's after me. Ryan looked at her with firm resolve. You're part of this team now. You don't fight alone anymore. She met his eyes for a long moment, then nodded. All right. Then we do this together. That night, the team prepared. Ryan authorized an off-record operation, Mission Shadowline. Their goal: locate the signal's origin. Find Commander Hale and identify Ghost Falcon's network. Lena suited up in her old Black Ops gear, light armor, dual holsters, and the faint emblem of a viper etched on her shoulder as she strapped her blade. Davis grinned. I've seen a lot of tough soldiers, ma'am, but you're something else. Lena smirked slightly. Let's hope that's enough. The chopper lifted off just before midnight. Rain lashed against the windows as they flew across the coastline toward an abandoned naval yard, the location where Hale's signal originated. As they landed, the air felt eerily quiet. No movement. No lights. Only the sound of wind and distant waves. Lena led the team forward, her flashlight slicing through the dark. Eyes sharp, she whispered, We're not alone. They moved through the yard, checking every corner. Then a sound. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Ryan motioned for the team to spread out. Suddenly, the old floodlights flicked on. The entire area lit up, and they were surrounded. Armed men in tactical gear emerged from the shadows. Rifles raised. Ryan cursed under his breath. Ambush. And from behind the line of soldiers, a man stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, half his face scarred, the mark of an old explosion. Lena froze. Ghost Falcon, he smirked. I've heard stories about you, Viper 1, the perfect soldier. The one they said couldn't be broken. Lena's tone was cold. You should have stayed hidden, he chuckled. Oh, but where's the fun in that? You took down my men, Harris, Donovan. I have to admit you live up to your name, but this ends tonight. Before he could give the order to fire, Lena threw a flash grenade. The yard exploded in white light. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Ryan and the SEALs fired back, taking cover behind containers. Lena moved like lightning, silent, precise, deadly. Every step calculated. Every shot counted. She reached Ghost Falcon. Engaging him hand to hand, he was strong, stronger than most, but she was faster. He swung. She ducked. He kicked. She blocked. Finally, she twisted his arm, sending his weapon flying into the mud. You talk too much, she hissed. He laughed, even as she held a blade to his throat. You think you've won? You have no idea how deep this goes. He pressed a small trigger in his palm, a detonator. Lena's eyes widened. Ryan shouted, "Bomb!" Everyone down. She tackled Falcon to the ground as the far end of the yard erupted in flames. The blast threw them both backward, knocking the wind out of her. Smoke filled the air. Falcon was gone. Minutes later, as the fire burned in the distance, Lena sat on the ground, coughing from the smoke. Ryan came running, helping her up. You okay? She nodded weakly. He escaped, but he's injured. He won't get far. Ryan looked around at the destruction. We saved what mattered. Our people. And now we know his face. Lena looked at the burning horizon. This isn't the end, Commander. Ghost Falcon's network runs deep. But we'll find him. Ryan smiled faintly. Then that's our next mission. Lena's voice turned calm but certain. Then we call it what it is. Ryan raised an eyebrow.
What's that?
She looked at him, eyes fierce with purpose. Operation Viper's Strike. Days later, the base held a private ceremony. Lena received a medal for bravery, the highest honor in the unit. But as she stood before the flag, she knew the real war was still ahead. Because somewhere out there, Ghost Falcon was alive and waiting. And when he resurfaced, she'd be ready. Because she wasn't just Lena Carter. Anymore, she was Viper One, the name that made enemies tremble and inspired every soldier who once doubted her.